Military Redditors, when you were in boot camp, what was the funniest thing you ever heard one of your drill sergeants say? We were marching back from our mock PT test and the tornado sirens began to go off. Navy boot camp is in Illinois, and we looked to our right and there's a tornado forming a couple football fields away in the middle of base. Our RDC, who was already irritated by our failure to line up in time, starts yelling "Run, Frikers, run." And two whole divisions of about 180 people break formation and begin to run to our barracks for our leaves. At the time it was one of the most terrifying experiences of my life, but in hindsight it was actually pretty funny, because the RDC caught a lot of it from other RDCs for doing that. He would explain to us, what the frick was I supposed to do? Keep you at heads in rank? Am I supposed to tell you, oh no, stay in formation, keep marching? Frick no, I'm not trying to die in this shithole. I'm not trying to die in this shithole. As said by many people in Illinois. My basic was in Missouri and we had tornadoes the whole time I was there. I had one DS who was terrified of them. One night, he comes bursting into the female bay where we were sleeping. He has his Kevlar in one hand and he peered out the window muttering to himself. He clearly wasn't stable, but it was funny to us. He just starts shouting all of a sudden that we have to get up and get our Kevlars and we're making a run for it. The building we're in is just a itty metal building with big bay areas. We had to run across the lawn and up a hill to make it to a brick building that was safer. He was yelling pretty much the same way yours was, telling us to run faster. I'm from a place that gets tornadoes often. It was really funny to me at the time. The sky wasn't green enough yet to cause tornadoes, but he was freaking out. Later on, we were trying to do the last field exercise before we graduate, but we couldn't, because we got out to the field site and a tornado started forming above us and we had to be evacuated to that same brick building. A recruit interrupted the chief to say, "Chief, there's a bunny rabbit behind you." Chief looked like his brain had actually shorted out, then responded, "Is it armed?" "I am going to take it in a box and send it to your parents for sending me theirs. I'm stealing this one." I posted this about a year ago. Hope it still holds up. Yes, the pine cone incident. So, I was at basic in Fort Benning, and we were zeroing our weapons as a company. Zeroing a weapon is when you ensure it shoots where you want it to by shooting a paper target repeatedly. Sounds easy enough. Now, I am a terrible shot. I know this. Everyone knows this. However, I get even worse when I'm being screamed at. I spent hours on the line until, finally, there were only 4 of us cats who hadn't gotten a go in the whole company. We had 3 more hours of range time, and if we failed to zero, we'd be recycled. Recycled entails having to revert to another company earlier along in basic training. So, not only do you lose your buddies, but you catch a couple extra weeks of training with a unit that knows you're it but of some sort. So, a fate worse than death. After another unsuccessful grouping, my drill sergeant, without a word, picked me up from the prone position and stood me up. He looked at me and said, "Go find me a pine cone." Confused, I took 4 steps, scooped up a pine cone and took it back to him. I presented him my findings, and he responded, "Private, that's not my pine cone. Go find me my fricking pine cone." Keep in mind, this is a forest in Georgia. There's a metric ton of pine cones. So I jog off and work on my mission. This entire time, my DS is shooting all my rounds off, genuinely enjoying himself. Every pine cone I bring to him is not his pine cone. This continued for about 15 minutes while the rest of the company, sitting in a clearing eating MREs, cheered me on. Finally, I breathlessly run up and hand him another pine cone, about to jog off to grab another. He looks at me, then the pine cone, then me. "Steve." He yells, "You found Steve, Private." I do not. I had never been more relieved in my entire life, until his face scrunched into a grimace. "Wait, Private, where's his family? WHO the frick takes a pine cone away from his family?" So, terrified, I spend around half an hour scavenging for appropriate sized pine cones, while he fires maniacally. Eventually, I hunt down his wife and his 2 kids. At one point I brought Steve's estranged son, Dennis, and I needed to do push-ups for causing Steve emotional duress. Anyway, he lets me fire. After I prop up the family to cheer me on, I go prone, and I zero on the first iteration. He picks me up again, cracks the only smile I ever saw from him, and says it was all in your head, you dumb frick. Good job. Now go do push-ups till I'm tired. He also had me write my congressman later that day to apologize for wasting taxpayer money on bullets. Fort Benning. Never again. The DIs did this thing where they would yell freeze, recruit, freeze. We would have to stop whatever we were doing. As my bunkmate was running back from the showers wearing nothing but a towel, the DI screamed freeze, recruit, freeze. My bunkmate tried to freeze on one leg and then fell down, naked, and, because he was following orders, just laid there naked. I laughed and my DI called me a cock gazer. Why are you stiff, private? Cause you said freeze, drill sergeant. I love a man. WHO takes charge. You're a bunch of Mufasa looking Motherfrikers. We had a lot of guys that grew facial hair very quickly. Walking by the snake pit when I'm stopped by another MTI who asked if my TI cursed at us. I answered no, as they technically aren't supposed to, but they still do. The MTI then grabbed a banana off my plate and said if I wanted it back I had to answer truthfully. Food being a luxury and I do love my bananas, I answered yes and he sent me on my way. Later that day in the day room my MTI comes busting in. Which one of you Motherfrikers sold me out for a goddamn banana? If you had to take a rid, my MTI would ask if you're pushing cotton to asses how badly you had to go. Basic is at first terrifying, but as you go through and start to relax you hear some of the funniest things in basic. We were lined up in 4 rows, or elements. One day a lone soul lined up in his own element. The instructor came running around the corner staring at this guy. He got right up to his face and screamed, "Are you Bruce Willis?" "No," so he whimpered. "Then why are you in the 5th element?" I had to use everything within me to not laugh. A guy had his own nickname tattooed on his forearm. The DI said, "Is that so your boyfriend knows who's jivin' the riach around?" "Well, you kept yelling out the wrong name, sir." "Clever, but this will get you fricked." Smells like Vaseline and broken dreams. Boys, if you don't stop swinging your arms, I'll fricking rip them off and beat you with them. My personal favorite. Unfrick yourself. Unfrick yourself. 6 years out of the army and I still occasionally find myself using this one. My battle buddy and I were ordered to dig holes, so when we're about to the waist he proceeded to turn on a hose. He started to fill the holes with water and told us to stay in the hole. Another DS walks by and asks him what he's doing. He says, "I'm watering my petunias." We had this awesome staff sergeant in 8 who brought a sledgehammer he named Mjolnir everywhere with him. If he caught you freaking up, he would hand you the hammer and tell you to go dig a hole with it. We came back from a run one night. It just was starting to snow. We came back to see all out bunks and lockers had been thrown out. I, being not the smartest PVT, said, "I could have sworn I made my bed." DS was behind me. I painted a fence at midnight in the snow for 3 hours. I almost cried for all 3 up. When I was in basic, the 3 drill sergeants for my platoon were all black, and we had a few racial incidents. The biggest offender was a ratbag, overweight, underachieving guy. We'll call him Pierce. Upon receiving punishment for one of his men frickups, Pierce let loose some racial slurs, and that was the last line. While Pierce and his unlucky battle buddy were getting the dog smoked out of them in front of the whole platoon, the drill sergeants were spitballing some ideas to resolve his behavior. Their solution was glorious. At the time in Army Basic, probably still today, every soldier had an assigned battle buddy, someone to share accountability and responsibility with. My company took this very seriously. We happened to have 2 very driven, very athletic, very tall and large black soldiers in the platoon as well. The platoon also happened to have an odd number of soldiers. There was a change in buddy assignments, and from that day until graduation, everywhere Pierce went, he was to be in Oreo formation, with each of upstanding black soldiers on either side of him. sharing accountability for his actions. They were colloquially referred to as the Oreo by even the leadership after a while. By graduation, Pierce had mostly turned around and was made into a person more worthy of wearing the uniform. This was my husband's story from Family Day. 1. Two-way between basic and 8-4 scouts, back while we were dating. Family Day was a weekend pass, the only break to see families that a scout got during the 4 months of combined basic and 8 training. I came in to see him by myself. Most of the other trainees had either just their parents or parents plus the girlfriend. Here's his story from after I left and he went back to the barracks. Husband. Standing in formation, DS Morgan asked who got some over Family Day. A bunch of hands went up. Not mine though. And he yelled back, "Bullet." He said something about not a single one of you got any, and then pointed at me. He's the only one who got any. Look at that stupid grin on his face. The rest of you should be lining up to suck his dong so you can remember what pussy tastes like. Do you know of a story like this? Leave it in the comments below. If you're new here, subscribe for more. We post the best Reddit videos daily. Thanks for watching.